is episode number 4 in my series, Intro to Improvising. Up until this point, we've been discussing various positions of the scale and the modes that they make from that. So we've done the C major, G mixolydian, and the D Dorian. So on today's episode, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to kind of bring all those scales together and show you how we can make some lines with them. So in order to do that, I'm going to teach you a typical cadence in jazz. It's called a 2-5-1. And how do we create this? So let's look at C major scale for a second. The 2 would be the C1, D2. So the chord for the D would be a D minor 7. The 5 for the C major scale is the G, as we discussed in the mixolydian episode. So that would be G7. And then the root 1 being the C major 7. So 2, D minor 7, 5, G7, 1, C major 7. So let's hear that. The reason that this works so well is because it creates motion. That G7 is the dominant, and it creates a little tension that's resolved on the C major 7, and it's kind of easy on the ears if you listen to it. And the reason why I want to use this is because it covers the typical chord structures that you would see most commonly. And the D, the minor 7 chord, the dominant, the 7 chord, and then the major 7. So that gives you a wide variety of ways that you can solo. So, if you haven't already, check out my backing track for the 2-5-1, and that'll be just a typical, like I was going through, C minor, D minor 7, G7, and then a C7. So let's turn my looper on with that backing track on there, and we'll go through. So, way that we could approach this is to find the scales on the neck. So it would be a D, that D Dorian that I showed you. It would be one time down for that. Then the G, one time down for that, and then the C, up, down, and up again. Now I suggest figuring out these are scales in various points on the neck so that you can go up and down, and so you're not just limited to one spot. But what I would do is turn on the backing track and kind of play those scales along. keep going around until you're comfortable with it, and then move to a different position, like And play around with that up and down the neck and get that used to this. And so what we're going to be doing is trying to find the chord tones for each one of the chords, and to let the listener know that it's actually moving and the chord is actually changed. So I'm going to do this real slow without the backing track, but one way to kind of approach it is to do the arpeggio. So you hear what's happening here is that's the C, so the 7 of the D minor 7 to a B, and that would be the 3rd of the G. And since there's not a B on the arpeggio of the D minor 7, you kind of highlight that, and that lets the listener know that you've changed chords. And you can end on that G if you want. Alright. And then I was ending it, if you listen. That's just the triad of the C major 7. So you have the 3rd of it here, the E, C, E, G. You hear that there? So you can just play around with that in different positions. That one was kind of a little more obvious with the change, and the arpeggio I was following straight along. But you want to get that into your ears and know what the chord changes sound like. Because ultimately this is the goal, is to be able to improvise and then show the listener that there's forward motion with the solo, and it's not just, well, sometimes it'll be stagnant and then you'll want to use modes and stay into different, just single positions for a little while, and highlight different phrases, which leads to the next point. When you're soloing, you're making a statement to the listener, whether it's in a live setting or on an album. You're speaking to them through your music. But imagine if you were actually speaking to them with your voice. You would have pauses with different statements and ideas so that it wasn't just a long run-on sentence. And the same thing applies to music. What you want to do is work on phrasing. And sometimes you want to repeat it. And then end on something that's different, so that it's unique and it keeps the listener interested. And the reason why we're using stuff that's in repetition sometimes is because of that familiarity. And then you hear how that's it's like a little bit of a surprise to you, and you're like, well, wow, that's cool, so what's next? Kind of thing. So that's one way. But then you want to kind of pause there. You don't want to keep going, because like this is what it would sound like if you didn't. You don't don't want to sound like that, obviously. And that's just a run-on sentence. And I think that's the easiest way to put it. Now, let's go back to this example that I had. I was telling you about the B there. And that's telling the listener, that the G is there. This is what's called a target note. The whole phrase is directed at ending on that B or the G continued up. Either way. So you want to, and this helps just organize your solos, and mentally you can keep thinking ahead and keep moving ahead because you're aiming for certain things. And the big notes that you'll want to keep in mind are going to be the 3 in the chord and the 7. That's going to tell a lot. The 3 is going to tell you if it's a minor or major, and same with the 7 as far as like, remember I was saying that the G mixolydian, G to F, sounds one way versus the major 7 would be the F sharp. So that's why you kind of want to think of those. The bass player is going to cover the root, so you might want to avoid using the root as the target note. That's why I was targeting the B and not the G. Now that whole line of thought is tonal changes in that approach to it. The other way that you could do it is through a modal play, and that's basically, let's pick the G mixolydian, and we'll just go up and down with only that scale with the looper. What you'll notice is there's not going to be any bad notes. Some are going to sound better than others, but there's not going to be any real bad ones. And this is going to rely heavily on the phrasing. So you hear that there really wasn't any bad sounding notes, but you're gonna rely on phrasing and keeping it interesting. But it's a good chance to be able to play without thinking about exactly what notes you're playing, and you can work on different techniques that you want to incorporate into your playing, like something like that. So it's a good opportunity for that. And learn this in all keys and in all positions on the neck. But you don't have to rush home and try it all at once. Get one key down where you're comfortable and then move to the next key and keep doing that. And then keep doing it in different positions on the neck so that kind of second nature. So you don't have to think about where to be and what notes when you're on different points in the neck. And all this is just to kind of prevent a train wreck later on when you're playing in a live setting or in a setting where you have other musicians with you. So until next time, which we'll be going over the Lydian scale, if you like this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and hit the little bell notification on the bottom. And then next week's episode will be the Lydian mode. Until then, have a wonderful day.